Welcome, everyone, as we kick off another episode of VMblog's Expert Interviews. This time, we're happy to have with us Cole Potrocky, the CTO and co-founder of Kintaba. Welcome.
Hey, David. Nice to be here.
I guess let's kind of kick things off. If you could, maybe start off talking about your background and why you started Kintaba.
Yeah, so I'm a former Facebooker. I started the workplace team with my co-founder, John. That was sort of like my first big project at Facebook. And then I moved a lot into productivity tools. So I worked on our internal tools team on our task system, which was sort of like the beginning of Asana for Dustin Moskowitz. I worked on our internal profiles, search, all sorts of like essentially productivity tools. And Facebook has these really rich, amazing productivity tools that just like work together so well. Like they have Seb Manager, which is sort of the equivalent of Kintaba, which is for coordinating incident response. They have this awesome sort of like if this then that manager for like dealing with complex workflows, tasks, which I mean that I just loved working on this product. Is like this really powerful way of dealing with all the work that coordinating all the work that happens at Facebook. So like I am just so interested in like how you make people productive, how you deal with knowledge. And that's sort of why we decided to start Kintaba, which really centers around this problem that I've been interested in my entire life, which is like not only how companies learn and evolve, but how individuals do. And so I see Kintaba as like mainly like a knowledge problem that we're trying to solve.
And why do you think, organizing the response to major incidents has traditionally been the sole responsibility of technical talent? I mean, it seems Kintaba believes that anyone should be able to declare a SEV1 incident and the entire organization should be involved in the response process, no?
Yeah, and I get it. When you're dealing with something going super wrong, you want the people who are able to fix the problem unencumbered, right? Focused on the problem, not being bothered by a bunch of people coming in. Like at Facebook, we had this problem where a bunch of teams would come in, people from different teams, and write +1 when they realized they were affected by an issue too, and it would drown out all of the like really rich material that from people who are trying to solve the problem. So I think that's like a big problem. With that being said, I think incident response has also sort of evolved. Everyone at the company is impacted by an incident. It could be the like PR team or the sales team. They need to know exactly what's going on so they can talk with their points of contact. You could have other engineers who are affected by the problem but aren't really able to solve it, who are coming in with their own problems, again, slowing down incident response. But we think like that slowing down is like worth it to some extent. Like it's a small price to pay for having this place to find information. And it largely comes back to how we think about knowledge. So there's that book Flow by I always mispronounce his name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, where he has this really interesting part where he talks about knowledge at companies. And he says, when knowledge is centrally accessible, easy to find, those companies that are the most likely to succeed, all other things being equal. So we think like that the incident response is sort of like this really rich place for knowledge, for teams to like look at, inspire from, and find like really important information. So yeah, I think that sort of sums it up.
Yeah, definitely. In the IT world, people say we all sort of struggle with this notion of tooling overload. People already use Slack and Jira and ServiceNow. What do you say to those folks? Why do they need another tool on top of all of this?
Yeah, so Matt, I don't want to drop too many names, but I try to like be guided by some type of like philosophy here. And one of my favorite books ever is The Death and Life of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. And she pushed me onto this idea of mistaking the appearance of order or organization for organization itself. her idea is that to the uninitiated, everything looks like chaos. It requires understanding to truly appreciate complex order. And so we built Kintaba under this, going back to knowledge, under this idea that companies, the best way that companies are going to learn and organize knowledge from a 2-person company to a 1,000-person company is through that failure wedge. Like when you fail and then you sort of reflect on that failure, you're going to come up with some really critical insight about how your company operates, and the really effective companies are going to do that process well. How that relates to tooling overload is we think that Kintaba is like a really contextual tool. It just gets out of your way when you need to just figure things out and fix things. And it sort of attaches this really natural place where you can create new knowledge and make your company more resilient. So like I get the tooling overload, like we use so many SaaS products internally, and I think Kintaba is really important just because you don't have to go in and like configure all your Jira settings. You don't have to be initiated on like in Scrum or all these like processes that look really good from the surface, but like often are really, really hard to get right. Like you can just use Kintaba and feel productive from the get-go, because we're not trying to like make things perfect. We're trying to improve a situation of no incident response. So like the 0 to 1 state is sort of like the important one with incident response, you know.
And then I understand that, you guys are also announcing a new product, I think, called Milestones. Can you maybe tell everyone what that is, how it works, and why it's important?
Yeah, so Milestones allow you to sort of like see this like overhead view of how an incident like worked as it was being solved, right? Like often enough, the timeline for when your services started going down or you notice an egress drop don't necessarily align for when the incident was created or when it might have been resolved. So milestones are this way to add these little timeline events that are easy as adding comments. Again, getting back to like that my answer to tooling overload, like we want things to be super easy and we want the tool to get out of the way. Like you should just be able to add timeline events and as you're dealing with the incident, so you have to do less later and people can come in, again, all those different teams from sales to PR can just sort of come in and get an overhead view of what's happening so they can talk with their points of contacts and get things done. But when you have this really clear incident of this really clear picture of everything that's happening during an incident, it also just sets you up for success when you finally deal with the postmortem, which is really the bread and butter of our products. And it's just about reflecting on what went wrong and trying to ensure that things don't happen in the future. Because while we're dealing with like mainly black swan events, ideally when you're dealing with incidents, each incident ought to be novel. If you're actually dealing with all of the things that came up in your previous incident, incidents tend to rhyme. So if you're really thoughtful about your incident response, you tend to catch patterns, and milestones are all about catching those patterns.
So that's interesting, if I understand correctly. So with these milestones, they can be pulled into the postmortem editor for better post-incident analysis. How do you convince companies to take that time to actually review incidents after they've already been resolved?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because like oftentimes when we talk about incident response, we talk about this perfect incident response where you're just really just doing everything correct. You have this deep postmortem analysis, like you get the problem fixed quickly and no one disrupts your workflow. But what happens usually is very similar to what happens with exercise when you're starting something new, right? Like you are never going to get used to doing a bunch of burpees or whatever because it just sucks, right? You need to start small and work up big. And so we're big on like micro habits at Kintaba. Like we think you don't need to have this really complex, huge postmortem workflow at the start. You can start by just having a clear overhead view of all of your incidents, maybe using milestones or just having just the history of the incident, because there's so much knowledge that you're going to see form just in the incident response. It's already useful. You can then just start by maybe adding in like one follow-up task. that is really valuable, that will help you just insulate yourself against further failure. And you can start building up these little habits that are really easy to do. Like, we definitely don't want people in the office space mindset where filing every incident requires you to like write a TPS report type of thing. Like, we don't want people to like dread writing postmortems, so they can just be easy. Like, I think if companies just stick with what's the one most important thing that we can do to keep this incident from happening again like this, and nothing else, they'll be really, really successful.
Well, this has been great, Cole. I appreciate you, taking time to talk to us about this. And Milestone sounds absolutely incredible. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on that. As we end, where can viewers go if they want to find out more information about some of the things that you've shared today?
So you can just go to our website, kintaba.com, and there'll be a lot of information there about Milestones and all the other awesome features we offer.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, David.
All right. Take care.